what was the real reason that they decided to do that? Why did they decide to end exclusivity that's been going on for 2 decades plus?
Good time zone internet. Hello and welcome to Design Club Live, the only game design show on the internet that isn't on Steam yet. I am your East Coast Design Club host, Will, joined as always by my West Coast co-host, Geoff. Say hi to the people, Geoff.
Hi to the people, Geoff. Hey, everybody. I am Geoffrey Zatkin. I am the studio director of Extra Credits and the game designer in residence coming at you from the West Coast. And I am excited to talk about this topic today because we got something coming in cold.
Yeah, I think our take is kind of cold. Hi, everyone. I'm Will. I'm the Twitch overlord and voice of the people here on the Twitch channel. So if you see me stare off in the distance, it's because we're joined live in virtual studio by our Twitch chat Brad, who will be chiming in as we talk today about the real reason that Blizzard is going to Steam. So, right? So a brief bit of context. Blizzard on PC only has been exclusive, we'll talk about that word in a second, on its own launcher, Battle.net, for a while. In fact, the vast majority of its existence.
Greater than 25 years.
Yeah, there have been other games that have joined the Battle.net launcher. Destiny 2 did for a while at launch.
I forgot about that, man.
Yeah, and there was a whole migration process, and it was weird. And now, after all of that time, 2 of their first-party IPs have finally made it over to Steam in the form of Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4. Now, we're going to timestamp this episode real quick. It is 1 p.m. on the 18th of October. Yesterday is when Diablo 4 came out. So anything that we say, please keep in mind that it's
roughly been a day.
It's been a day. A heck of a day for Blizzard. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, Geoff, what the heck is exclusivity about? What does that word mean?
When 2 people like each other.
No. Other exclusivity.
Oh, okay. Video game exclusivity.
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say, we are about to veer wildly off topic here. But there's basically a couple kinds of exclusivity in the video game industry that you hear talked about a lot. One of the biggest ones that people talk about is platform exclusivity. So, for example, for a long time, Halo, only available on the Xbox. God of War, only available on the PlayStation. Mario Kart, only available on whichever platform Wii has out at the time. And this is interesting in the context of Blizzard here. This is not something that they have had for a while because they put Overwatch and Diablo on multiple different consoles. So, and we'll talk about why you would do exclusivity. Actually, we'll come to that in a minute. The other one you get is you get storefront exclusivity. Like, for example, you could only play World of Warcraft on Battle.net. You can only play Rocket League on the Epic Store. There's a lot of games you can only play on iOS, on your iPhone. And these are ones that are specific to a storefront as opposed to a platform. And sometimes those get conflated because you get like the Xbox Store, which up until recently didn't work, only worked on the Xbox as opposed to Windows. There are other kinds of exclusivity like time-based and regional, and those are very important, but those aren't as pertinent to the discussion today.
Right.
So big basic thing. Platform exclusivity means only on a certain piece of hardware. Storefront means only a certain store will sell you this game.
Okay, great. And we've seen that in other places, in other ways throughout the time. And there's been a fair amount of sort of acceptance of platform exclusivity, right? I think people wish Halo was on more stuff, but they never push back. But people have boycotted games because they were Epic exclusive, because it feels like storefront exclusivity is really a different animal, especially for PC gamers. So there's the kind of exclusivity that Blizzard's been engaged in is a little more contentious than just, this is a flagship character. They belong on the flagship system. Okay, so why do this, right? Doesn't it logically follow? If I'm a game developer, right, I want my game to be in as many places as possible so I can I can let as many people as possible play it and then pay me money for playing my game, right? I want it to be on mobile, I want it to be on Xbox and PlayStation and Switch and PC, and I want it to be on your Samsung smart fridge, and I want it to be on everything. So why would I narrow that window, or why would I say only on Steam or only on Battle.net? Why would I do that, Geoff?
Well, it's almost, let's look at media for a second. Like, why can you only watch The Witcher on Netflix?
Okay.
Why can you only watch Star Trek on Paramount? You know, why can you only watch Marvel movies on the Disney
Plus? Yeah.
Disney Plus. And so exclusivity, one of the biggest reasons to have exclusivity is to drive people to your platform. So there's a couple different ways to come at it from a platform perspective. So if you're running a platform, or in this case, a marketplace, you want to bring people to your platform or marketplace and be like, hey, we got a whole bunch of good stuff. Come buy it here. And one of the big reasons that, say you're a publisher, that you might want to run your own platform, like EA running Origin, Activision-Blizzard running Battle.net, etc., is if you take your game and you go put your game on the Xbox, you're giving a certain amount, say, 30% of every game you sell, that amount of money goes to Microsoft, who's hosting that storefront. And this went on for a long time. And that's the same. You go sell it at GameStop, they're going to take 30%. And at a certain point, a lot of big groups went, we could host our own store and not pay 30% to these other people.
Yeah.
And suddenly, all of these different storefronts took off. And so that is a reason that you might be exclusive to a store is when, Sony puts out something first party, they're not necessarily interested in having people come anywhere other than the PlayStation to play it. They want to develop things to bring people in. The same way when Netflix makes Witcher, they aren't particularly interested in going and putting it on a whole bunch of other places to get more views. They want people to come to Netflix to watch it.
Right, and that's what Epic's been doing, right? That's the reason that Epic's been doing storefront exclusives and the free storefront exclusive games on Epic, right? Those are all, and we've talked loosely about this in a bunch of places, but those are all part of the user acquisition cost, or the UAC, for a user. Is we're going to pay an amount of money to have a thing that a user has to come to us to buy or get in some way. And now they're in our system, and it will be easier to get them to return.
Right.
Yeah.
Epic's basically been buying market share by giving away 2 free games a week since they launched their store. It's like, come build up a huge library like your Steam library, and that kind of getting that certain point. And again, just to give you a scale of money for this, let's take a game like Grand Theft Auto. Not that Grand Theft Auto was ever exclusive, but that's $1 billion game. Or, that made $1 billion in its first couple weeks.
Right.
30% of that is $300 million.
Right. This is not an insignificant sum of money we're talking about. It's $18 a copy on a $60 game.
Mm-hmm. So when you start looking at some publishers being like, we launch a couple of $1 billion games a year, you can see the incentive on their side to suddenly want to own the marketplace. Even if they have to go spend a stupid amount of money to build the marketplace. From a consumer's perspective, you just want everything in this, every shop so you can buy it wherever you want it.
Right.
But from the publisher, the person owning the marketplace perspective, exclusivity makes sense. From a developer standpoint on exclusivity, developers don't have that. Developers want their game to go everywhere. And so the only reason developers usually do exclusivity is somebody pays them to do it.
Right.
The publisher or funds them to do it. The publisher funding your game is Sony and says, you're building a game for us, right? And you say, yes, you are paying me money to build a game for you. And that negotiation happens knowing that it will only be on one spot. So as people go to the terms. Or, that's basically it. You're getting paid to be exclusive, or you're getting it in trade. Or actually, we'll talk about other reasons later for smaller ones. But basically, people don't limit themselves to a storefront. They don't limit exclusivity unless there's a reason to do so.
Right.
Just straight up.
And that's
intentional.
Right. And that's because there is the additional cost of exclusivity can be pretty high, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, Geoff, what's your favorite Zelda game?
I've never played a Zelda game because I don't own a Wii. Excuse me, I owned a Wii. Didn't own a Wii U, and I don't own a Switch.
Right. And I grew up in a Nintendo household, so I missed out on all of the Xbox first gen. I didn't play Halo until the 360 era. I didn't play any of the PlayStation games. I vaguely remember playing some of them when I went over to a friend's house, but all of my formative memories are of Nintendo games because I was in the Nintendo bucket.
And see, it's the funny thing because you get that you've never played a Zelda game, and I'm sitting here thinking I've owned a PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5. Right. I owned the Xbox, the 360, the one
yeah.
I owned all of those. I actually want to call this out. Synchronos also points out that Halo 1 was on PC. That's fair. I was also a Mac house. So I was Mac Nintendo. So I was in a very narrow, very specific bucket for exclusive games that's shaped some of my habits. Oh, yeah.
Right?
How can it not?
Right. And so that is a big thing to think about for exclusive, I guess a downside is that I'm never, even though I absolutely loved God of War Dad of Boy edition, right? The God of War reboot, right? When I borrowed a friend's PlayStation and played it, I don't have the same anticipation. I'm not wired into that ecosystem the same way that I am for Zelda, right?
But you didn't go through a trilogy of games previously in Greek mythology before switching to Norse.
Correct.
That set up Kratos for you.
Exactly. And so those, one of the big downsides of exclusivity is if somebody misses it and doesn't get into whatever bucket your exclusivity is, they're out, right? And they may be out for a while because if you're not actively trying to get them in, and we've talked about marketing to different groups, it's much easier to market to groups who are already interested in your product, right? They'd have to do extra work to invest me in the idea of buying a PlayStation 5 and then buying God of War Ragnarok, right? Instead of just waiting for it to come out on PC. And this is
one of the back and forth dangers is that you are limiting your potential audience, but you're also saying, hey, we've got the only place in town to get the thing. And when enough of those stack up, they hope you get the incentive to go out and buy the platform or move to the storefront.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. So
that's the big exclusivities right there.
Okay, so we've got pros and cons, and each game developer, publisher, whoever's involved in the decision, weighs those for themselves and decides whether or not they're going to do an exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they end that exclusivity thing. What changes, Geoff? What generally drives the move to end an exclusivity agreement or arrangement for a game, franchise, series, developer, whatever?
Sometimes it depends on the size of a group. One of my last studios, when we were a small studio, we actually were exclusive to a platform first because we didn't have the resources to make the game for multiple platforms and launch simultaneously. So we basically shopped it around, found a group that wouldn't give us money, but would give us a whole bunch of free marketing and up on the top of the storefront page, and said, cool, we'll do you guys first. You'll have a limited exclusivity of 3 months in return for giving us all this marketing, because we didn't have the ability to launch 2 anyway.
Right.
So we basically bargained to get something we couldn't have done into giving us a huge amount of free marketing for the game and an excuse for the rest of the community of the 3 months that it would take us to get it to the next set of platforms.
So for a smaller developer, there's this all upside arrangement where you're like, yeah, I'll be exclusive for a while because it benefits me purely, right? That's all upside for you. And
if you have somebody in your studio who's a good enough negotiator and the contacts to go to the store and be like, hey, we got this cool thing coming out, would you like to have it exclusive and this is a pretty common thing that happens. For a bigger group, it can actually be the same thing. You might have, for example, Microsoft pay a group to put a game out on the Xbox a couple months earlier and, promise them a whole bunch of marketing. And for the publisher, they just do the math. They're like, okay, Microsoft's willing to give us $3 million worth of marketing. This is a mid-tier game, blah, blah. They do the math on that. And if it makes sense, there used to be 10 or 15 years ago, each of the consoles would try and get you to put an exclusive feature in your game that was only accessible on that console. because they knew you were going to put it out on all of them, but it's like, buy it on the PlayStation to get so-and-so, or you get free skins specific to a thing or an extra level, and everybody hated that, but...
There was the one that springs to mind is that at one point, I think Darth Vader was an exclusive character for one of the Soul Calibur games. You had to like get it on PlayStation, and I had it on GameCube, and I was like, why? That's, by the way, why I'm bad at fighting games. My first and favorite fighting game was on the GameCube controller, and was not Smash. I'm bad at fighting games because of it. I'm fairly convinced. Right?
But,
so,
yeah. And so, I mean, those are, sometimes you end exclusivity years later to get kind of a PR push and make an older game relevant again. And that's more of a storefront kind of thing. Like Epic right now, they're courting a whole bunch of people with older games and saying, bring them over to the Epic store. And I think the deal is you get the entirety of the first 6 months revenue. They will not take any cut if you bring an old game over. So as long as you can put it on their storefront, you're guaranteed the entirety of the money as opposed to them taking the cut.
And for PC, that move, right? Just real quickly to address this, the technical details of that move from one PC storefront to another, much easier.
Right.
Much easier.
If you have no in-game transactions, it's almost free.
Right.
Almost. Definitely not entirely free.
Right.
If you have in-game transactions or other things, you're starting to hook up, but it is significantly easier than, say, porting from a PlayStation to an Xbox, or even an Xbox to a PC.
Or from anything to the Switch, or vice versa. The Switch is definitely an outlier because of its smaller form factor, lower horsepower, and different control scheme requirements. Plus, you have to tie into the Nintendo online system, and that's all just a mess, right? So,
and the final one is your storefront may not be strong enough. Like EA found this with their Origin storefront, and a couple of other, when Ubisoft, everybody started doing their own storefronts, tried to put a couple of games up there, flagship games to be exclusive, and realized that there just weren't enough. People wanted the game, but not enough to get a new storefront.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so ended up ending their exclusivity on some of these, and making it an option as opposed to you must.
And on the Origin front, I think they discovered over time that while it is true that you're giving 30% of your money away, there is an additional cost associated with it, which is maintaining that platform. And Origin got a reputation, deserved or not. We're not here to discuss whether or not it was deserved. It got a reputation as being kind of buggy and bad with updates and hogging a lot of desktop resources. And so it became a negative for players who wouldn't buy things if they were on Origin because of that perceived negative, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and it turns out making a storefront and all the hosting and everything behind it sounds a lot easier to do.
Yes.
It sounds a lot easier than it is to do well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Epic was guilty of this when they started, right? How hard could it possibly be to build a storefront? You click on the button, you buy the game. What about a cart, Epic? We didn't think about that. Hold for 6 months to a year, please, while we figure out a cart system to let you buy multiple games at once, right? That's just a function of them not thinking all of the way through about what it actually takes to run a storefront, right?
Yeah, it's kind of that Steam approach.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
But yeah, a lot of early storefronts, when everybody stood them up, like Steam had such an advantage because they'd been doing it for so long that it was really hard for people to catch up.
Right. Okay. So that's exclusivity in general. I think we got through that in a good clip. So now let's talk about Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4. So
well, let's start with Battle.net. So Battle.net is a PC exclusive platform.
Correct.
So actually, storefront.
Yes.
Which feels a bit like a platform in a weird way.
Yes.
But it is also a very old one. It, like Steam, has been around for so long that it has a wealth of features at this point and is definitely one of the better internet stores around.
Battle.net, I believe, grew out of the multiplayer clients for StarCraft
and Warcraft. StarCraft 1 and Warcraft
Yes.
2 or 3. I think it was 2.
Sorry. StarCraft has been around so long, I forget that Blizzard, much like Valve, has forgotten how to count to 3. So yes, StarCraft 1 and Warcraft 2 both had a thing called Battle.net in it, later Battle.net, that was the multiplayer client, and that all kind of grew out of that rather than, I think, directly out of a storefront. It felt like Battle.net grew out of the...
It was initially the online multiplayer component to go play other players.
Friends, chat features, matchmaking, all of that was contained in Battle.net, which was totally optional at the time because, reminder, that Warcraft 2 and StarCraft 1 existed contemporaneously with dial-up.
Yeah.
So they weren't...
Synchronos is right, by the way. It started on StarCraft 1 and then got backwards ported to Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 2.
Yes.
And I think the next step up from that was they turned it into an installer then.
Yes.
So that you could basically register all your Blizzard games through it and re-download them.
If you had a DSL connection at the time, which was...
And then once
deal.
they had that, they made the step to, if I remember correctly, they made the step to storefront because you had the ability to download a game and play online. And they're like, well, if you can download a game, I bet we could just sell it to you here.
Right. And then it all sort of came to a head with WoW. Because that was like the big thing that they were charging people on an ongoing basis and updating and launching significantly. Right. Versus, I mean, Warcraft 3 had patches and you had to be able to download maps because that's how we got Dota and all of that. So, okay. So Battle.net spawned out of multiplayer and it has been the way that Blizzard has sold their games ever since. On PC. I really want to refocus this on PC. Yes, they've sold on consoles before. Diablo and Overwatch have both had series entries on previous consoles. Back to the 360 generation.
And actually, digital stores, because you could still go to GameStop and buy a copy of many of their games for the PC. But at a certain point, people stopped selling PC games in stores.
Who remembers battle chests? I remember.
Dude.
Battle chests, right? We just got them whenever they were on super deep discount after they stopped being hyper relevant so that we could install. It was so weird. I used to have like LAN parties. Right, because you could have like satellite installers. Anyway, way in the weeds. Anyway, it was super cool. So after all of this time, they have an existing user base on an existing platform that's grown organically with their business model, and they're choosing to voluntarily end that exclusivity on their own launcher. That feels kind of like it must have had an impulse, right? Like, at this point, it's largely
What was the real reason that they decided to do that? Why did they decide to end exclusivity that's been going on for 2 decades plus?
Right.
And suddenly move to the biggest PC marketplace, Steam.
Right.
And to be fair, Battle.net has existed for so long that I would posit, a lot of gamers think of that in the same way as another place they have, that is another acceptable storefront. And it's probably because of how deep the penetration was for World of Warcraft.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, most people have Battle.net installed who played World of Warcraft at some point and may return or actively play or whatever.
Which meant that then suddenly with that, you'd see Warcraft games, you'd see StarCraft games, you'd see Diablo games, later you'd see Hearthstone, later you'd see Overwatch, big things. HOTS.
Yeah, and there's a very interesting thing that happens in that space, which is that Blizzard has a very, if you like a Blizzard game, you probably like all Blizzard games mentality, right? Just like the target audience for Tears of the Kingdom was, do you own a Switch? If yes, we think you'll probably like Tears of the Kingdom. Or, do you own a Switch? You probably have Mario Kart 8. And if you don't, you should. Because that's Nintendo's viewpoint, is that their first-party titles are aimed at, broadly speaking, everyone who owns a Switch. Right?
And in a lot of cases, Blizzard's Battle.net feels like a platform in that case. It feels more like Nintendo first party. Where if you like Nintendo first party games, you're probably going to get more. For a long time, if you liked Blizzard games, pretty much everything they made would probably, not everything, but pretty much everything they made would probably appeal to you in the same way that if you like Nintendo first party, pretty much everything they made would probably appeal to you. Right. It had that same kind of vibe for a long time.
Okay. So all of that having been said, What's our big impetus? So I've got a couple of guesses, and then
I think I know the answer, but let's walk our way through.
Okay, cool. So, my first one is I believe, and this is sort of a gut feeling based on reading the sort of the news cycle and everything about it, is that they have a need to surface the game to new players. So let's walk through a hypothetical scenario. Okay. I am a player of games on Steam. My primary game is Dota 2 for whatever reason. And I somehow missed Dota 1. We're going to stipulate that such a player exists. You can fight me in the comments if you want. I am looking for a new game that has a lot of, that has a competitive multiplayer component. Prior to this move, if I was just looking around on Steam, there would be no way to surface Overwatch 2 to me. It was not in the pool of available games that Steam's algorithm would show to me. I would have to leave the Steam garden, right? The Steam
ecosystem.
Right. I'd have to leave the ecosystem and find it someplace else, which is an additional step of effort that I'm probably not going to take because I'm habituated. I'm habituated to playing and purchasing my games on Steam because that's where I go to play games, right? And similarly, if I'm looking for something with a skill build, maybe a little longer, maybe a little in the third person, click around a lot, build cool skills, explode minions kind of thing, Diablo 4 until yesterday wasn't going to be surfaced to me either. And they could not have gotten my business because that business, if I was only looking on Steam, would have gone to Last Epoch, Path of Exile, Torchlight, Titan Quest, any of the other
Torchlight.
ARPGs that are available on that, right? And I'm not saying that the chance is now high that I'm going to go to those things, or indeed that it's high that I didn't think of those things, but there was no surfacing of those games to new players on that storefront. And I think...
Oh, good.
And I just think that that's an advantage that they're now attempting to cultivate. We'll talk a little bit about how successful they are, but yeah.
Yeah, and so what we're surmising here is that there are, like, with a smaller studio than Activision, like, let's move from just calling them Blizzard to now calling them what they are, which is Activision-Blizzard plus King.
Right.
Because that actually does make a difference. Like, with the reach of all of that, I would posit that anybody who likes Diablo-like games, like that whole list you just mentioned, has heard of Diablo. Like, there are probably mythical people that haven't. So what you're looking for is somebody so invested in the Steam ecosystem or so not invested in being on Battle.net that this switch would...
I agree that it's unlikely that they've never heard of it, but it's not something that's going to leap to mind. Right? It's not present in the same way that I get suggestions or that I see my friends playing games on Steam, right? It's not, I may have heard of them, but it's an additional barrier, right? It's an additional dive to get into a different ecosystem, right? So I agree that you're correct. I'm just saying that there is an advantage here. It may not be huge, but it is an advantage.
So with any group other than Blizzard, I would think that it would have been a larger advantage.
Yes.
And Blizzard will hopefully see some advantage out of this. This one just doesn't feel like a really large advantage on that. But that is absolutely a reason they could have done it.
Yeah. And
hit me with another one. Oh.
Okay, here's another one. It is no secret that both of the games that they have elected to move over first, Overwatch 2 and and Diablo 4, are microtransaction heavy. They're very microtransaction heavy. It's one of the main critiques against them. We're not here to discuss that, but it is worth noting that both of them have a plethora of microtransactions. Overwatch because it's free to play, and Diablo because it's got the battle pass and all of that. There is an untapped fund of money which Blizzard is eager to get their hands on, which exists solely on Steam and nowhere else. Steam has Steam wallets.
Okay, well, tell me about Steam wallets.
Okay, great. I'm so glad you asked. Steam wallets are where funds from the Steam marketplace go. And anytime you get a refund on Steam that you don't specifically, if you don't specify that it needs to go back to the payment method, you'll generally get paid in a store credit on Steam, which means if you're on the Steam browser and you look in the upper right-hand corner, you may have a balance there. Some people, particularly people, high spenders, high rollers, who spend a lot of money on games that Blizzard would like to emulate, Dota 2 and Counter-Strike, have a lot of money in their Steam wallets, because when you sell a knife from Counter-Strike on the Steam marketplace, the money that you get paid goes in your Steam wallet. You cannot withdraw money from your Steam wallet. So there's a big credit on a bunch.
You can't take it out?
No, it's stuck in your Steam wallet.
Oh, okay. So it is stuck within the Steam store ecosystem.
Yes.
So there's basically people with large balances looking for things to spend it on.
Exactly.
Is what you're saying.
And the Steam gift cards all go into the Steam balance, right? So there is a bunch of money, undisclosed amount. I'm willing to bet that it's very similar to the Starbucks card thing, right? Where Starbucks just has a bunch of money that people have paid them that they're just holding as balance, right? Steam does that too. And so that pool of money is something that they could not access. They could not tempt people to spend that pool of money in any way other than going to Steam. I don't think that that's a huge part of it either, but I do want to point out that when you bring your first two entries over and they're very microtransaction heavy, I mean, granted, it's Blizzard, pretty much all their games are reasonably heavy on microtransaction now.
That's because they've moved to basically a more free-to-play style.
Right, live service with microtransactions model. It makes sense that they would want to access that. So that is an advantage of bringing their games to Steam, and particularly these two games to Steam.
Yeah. And as a quick note here, like, deciding to move a game to Steam isn't something that they're like last week, like, hey, let's do this. Mm-hmm. My guess is this took at least half a year of lead time.
That sounds, yeah.
They started this at least half a year ago, because they would have had to decide they wanted to do it. They would have had to have unwound all of their games from being tied exclusively into the Battle.net store, right, with all of those microtransactions and wallet balances and everything, and then contacted Steam, set up promotion deals and everything else for bringing their games over and integrate themselves into the Steam system. Mm-hmm. They probably could have rushed it in maybe, I would guess, half that time. But being Blizzard and being methodical, I'm guessing this all started half a year ago, at least, right, maybe even longer.
Yep. So
this theoretically shouldn't be thought of as having been influenced by recent events, but more of a long-form trend on why Microsoft or Activision-Blizzard would want to move things over to Steam, to lose the Battle.net exclusivity. Yep. Because in a lot of cases, Battle.net exclusivity for Blizzard and then for Activision above it was a pretty interesting thing. There were some games that a lot of people liked. Just honestly, a very lot of people liked that they got to keep the entirety of the money from.
Yep.
That they weren't going to lose that 30%.
Mm-hmm. So one more additional Steam exclusivity perk, and then let's talk about the big elephant in the room. One other one that chat just very correctly brought up, thank you, Brad, is that many people view Diablo 4 as being better on the Steam Deck. And Steam Deck access to brings both it both allows them to get to a new storefront and a new platform. So by surfacing and it's I believe, I will double check as we talk, I'm under the impression that Diablo 4 is verified Steam Deck compatible. So that is another thing to keep in mind, is that by accessing Steam, you accessed all the people who don't play games on a PC. They play it on a Steam Deck, which is admittedly a tiny Linux PC, but it is still a different form factor and should be considered a different platform.
Hey, could you throw Snackin's comment up there?
I think that's a really great question.
That's a good transition, actually.
Snackin's question is, so it would have taken too long to be influenced by the merger pushback.
So here's my thought. Conspiracy hat on. Oh, already on.
Yeah. Prepped and ready.
Actually, what did I put? Will, I got a thing for you today. So here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be Geoff from the future coming in to tell me himself he was right on this. Okay.
Yeah, okay. This is Geoff from the future. All right.
Geoff from the future.
Okay.
Coming in. Actually, is this a little distracting or should I do this?
It's fine. Keep going. Just keep
Look, it changes colors independently.
We were on such a roll, and then Geoff got distracted. Keep going. Don't make it blank.
I'm not going to give anybody seizures.
All right, good. All right, keep going.
Okay. Hat on.
Yeah.
Because it was already on. I think somewhere between a year to 6 months ago, as Activision-Blizzard was trying to get acquired by Microsoft, and they were getting all of the pushback of, you have too much exclusivity, you're going to be this, you're going to own all of it, that somebody there went, hey, what if we moved, we've already put our games on consoles. What if we broke exclusivity? What if we showed that we were so willing to be team players that we took this platform that's been 25 years exclusive and started moving some of our biggest games off of it? Because one of the things Microsoft is Microsoft is a PC company as well as a Xbox company.
Yep.
Like, arguably, their PC is division is way more important to them, or the Windows division, than their Xbox division.
Sure.
So I think somewhere in Activision-Blizzard, they're like, wow, if we did this, I think this would help us with the acquisition, because we'd have one more place of showing how willing we were to go out and not be a monopoly. And I think that's actually the real reason that the Blizzard games from Battle.net started migrating over to Steam, is that they were using this as a card to play so that the acquisition would go through. Because they very much wanted to get that $69 billion. Say again, $69 billion.
Dollars, yeah.
That Microsoft was willing to pay them. And I think some orders came down on high that this was going to be one more card that could be played, in addition to all of the other things that they talked about of, hey, we won't be exclusive to this. Ubisoft gets the right to distribute these over here for a while. That this was one more card that would get played. And it just so, it got announced shortly before the EU said, okay, we're removing the restriction, you can get acquired.
Yeah. And I think I'm not going to say that Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 were sacrificial pawns. I will say, though, that the reception for both of those games has been not ideal in general.
Let's get to that in a second, because that is something they were willing to sacrifice the exclusivity on the PC side and all of the accompanying revenue, and risk a couple of things that we're going to talk about in order to help the merger go through. Yep. There were probably extra benefits, but if I had to bet a large amount of money, I would bet that large amount of money on this being the reason that it happened.
Yeah.
Just having been around the video game industry for 25 plus years now and seen a lot of business deals go through, this is what it feels like. This is like the subtext behind, or the hidden writing behind the public statement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other things are all upsides, but I definitely agree that there's a huge component of it that is focused fundamentally on keeping regulators happy and doing the Microsoft merger successfully.
I think there are about 69 billion reasons for
right? Amazing.
that to happen that way.
So much money. Okay, so
it is a lot of money.
So all of that having been said, let's look at how it's going for them. Just real quick for the sake of argument.
Wait, with data?
Yeah, we even got data. So
I like data.
Let's do first in, first out. So Overwatch 2 released on the 10th of August. Again, it is the 18th of October as of time of recording.
So August, September, October, so 2 months.
Yeah, it's been a little over 2 months.
2 months and a week. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Currently, as of time of recording, Overwatch sits at 11.8% positive reviews on Steam after 199,423. By the way, all of the statistics that we're going to be quoting here come from Steamdb, and in the description below, I will have links directly to the Steamdb pages for both Overwatch and Diablo 4 so that you can see the same data that we're talking about.
So they're basically review bombed to hell.
That's correct. Now, important note, Overwatch 2 is free. So it's very easy to review bomb, right? Because anyone can claim a copy and install it and then say, I played it and I didn't like it, and then write a review. right? And the exact percent.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The exact percentage of positive reviews on Steam is also not exactly accurate, because people will say that a review is positive and then leave negative commentary on it, because positive reviews are generally seen more frequently, particularly if there are fewer of them, because Steam tries to give you a couple positive reviews and a couple negative reviews. It feels like their exact algorithm on that is not, to the best of my knowledge, public.
Why such hate? I mean, I'm kind of curious, because Overwatch 2 is definitely better than an 11% game. Overwatch 2 is honestly an exceptionally good team shooter.
Lots of people feel cheated out of what they perceived to be a major reason that the Overwatch brand moved to a sequel rather than continuing to update Overwatch 1, which was the Overwatch story mode, single player hero mode thing. And lots of people are very disgruntled at Overwatch 2 as a game because they decided they were no longer going to, they pulled that whole component out of the game. And so people feel like they were cheated. And importantly, there's no other place to leave a review for Overwatch 2, right? You can only leave a review for it on Steam. So a lot of those people probably didn't actually play on Steam. They downloaded it or claimed it on their account. I don't even know if you have to download it. I think you just have to claim it on your account for a free-to-play game to issue a review, right? Or played a couple of matches and been like, see, I have playtime. Now I can complain, right? But it's the only venue to really do that in a way that's coupled with the game. Now,
so not quite a Destiny 1 to Destiny 2 thing, but...
Correct. Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who are unhappy that Destiny 2 got announced. So like, why don't you just keep updating Destiny 1?
Yep. And so currently, as of time of recording, it is the middle of the day. Worth noting, there are 19,308 people in game, with an all-time peak of 75,608 and a 24-hour peak of 31,000. So there's still a significant number of people playing the game through Steam.
What rank does that put them of like games on Steam for being played right now?
Currently on Steam right now, they are number...
Actually, hold on. I can look this up. I brought that page up.
Yep.
There we go. They are number 56.
Yep. That is correct.
So they are the fifth game. Yeah, the 56th most played game currently happening on Steam at this second.
Correct.
So not bad, but not bad. Definitely not huge. Of course, the question is, how many people who are interested in Overwatch moved over, because all of the Battle.net people are still happily playing.
Yeah, they didn't.
So, yeah, these are basically new players or players who for some reason decided they wanted to stop playing on Battle.net and instead play on Steam.
Correct. Now, so that complicates things somewhat, both as a free-to-play game and as a move. So I think overall it's going well for them. I don't think it's going great. I also don't think it's an unmitigated disaster. They still get about 30,000 people playing it daily.
And I would posit that at least 90% of those have got to be new players.
Sure. And the cost that they paid for it was the cost of the transition and an abysmal review score, which will eventually, like if you, I actually want to see if I pull up.
And the cost of maintaining it.
And the cost of
This is one more place that they have to, share the market on, hook up all the prices and the price changes in the marketplace and patch everything to. Yeah. Like that's not a huge cost in the grand scheme of things, but it is still a substantive cost.
Sure, absolutely. Now, I will also say that Steam keeps, if you're unfamiliar with Steam, Steam keeps 2 buckets of reviews, all reviews and recent reviews. And they're slowly climbing out of that 10%, because a lot of those initial negative reviews were when the game initially launched.
Oh.
Right? And remember, No Man's Sky originally had a terrible review score when it came out, and it slowly crept up on the basis of its recent reviews as they made improvements and changes. Currently, it's 23% positive, which is still not good. Please do not mistake.
Do you know what the trailing is on recent? Is it like 2 weeks, 30 days?
Recent is, I do not have an exact
No,
time frame for recent is past, I believe, 30 days ish. Yes,
Okay.
it's past 30 days is for recent review.
Crown Joker from chat just said 30 days as well. So.
I corroborated by pulling up the chart. I have complex data.
Cool. Okay.
So
it's more than doubled once you, and we'll see what it is in 6 more months.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's going to be a theme as we look at Diablo 4. So, Geoff, in the first 24 hours that Diablo 4 in its Season 2 incarnation launched on Steam, what do you think the top 24-hour concurrent player count was? Over the past 24 hours, the highest number of people that were all playing at once. Given that
I'd give, like, as a guess, 10,000. I don't think there's a huge rush. Like, Diablo 4 has been out long enough on a PC platform that if you wanted it at this point, I think you would have gotten it unless you were just like, I'm not doing Battle.net. I mean, Steam did put huge banners up the day it went live. Yep. So it's equivalently in the store. It's not on sale, is it?
It is on sale, but it is also on sale on Battle.net because it is the beginning of the new season. So it is 25% off in both locations.
Okay, that's not bad. But my guess is that there's not a stampede of people rushing out to get it day one for something that's been available for a while.
And you would be correct.
And as Synchronos in chat said, it's also really expensive.
That's also correct. Even at 25% off, it's $52.49 USD.
So that's a pure guess. I could easily see it being double that or half that, but I'm guessing it's not a huge rush.
Half is actually the correct answer. The 24-hour peak for it was 5,429, and it is currently sitting at 51.5% positive after only 600 some odd reviews. Exact number, of course, fluctuates because we're recording live the day after.
Right.
So, interestingly, there is also a trend, which I have to call out here in those negative reviews. Some of those negative reviews are self-proclaimed Battle.net users who came to Steam, purchased the game, left a negative review, and then got a refund under Steam's refund window. People are that upset about Diablo 4. So, as with Overwatch...
Does Battle.net not leave... So Battle.net, because they're a closed ecosystem, has no reason to have you put reviews on there.
And that is one of the biggest downsides of this for them, is that now there is a bulletin board attached to their sale front where people can leave comments. And in fact, some of the positive comments, for Diablo 4 are things like, I can't believe how much Blizzard paid me to leave a positive review. Thumbs up. Right? So you are free to draw your own conclusions about the nature of what that person actually thinks. But again, the reviews are not going to tell the whole story, which is why we're going to focus on concurrent player count. There is a powerful level of disgruntledness, right? And in addition, this is another weird quirk. People are leaving suggestions of what game you should play instead. Because you can leave a link in a review. And the number one game that everyone suggests you should play instead is Baldur's Gate 3. Just go buy Baldur's Gate 3. Don't buy this game. Buy Baldur's Gate 3 instead. It's better. Is one of the very common review trends that I'm seeing, as well as recommending Path of Exile and Last Epoch and Torchlight. And this is part of that risk coming back, is that while it is competing with those games, it's also competing with those games in a place where you could just go buy that instead. So if you are inclined to look at the reviews, you're going to be pushed somewhere else. And so I think overall, I cannot imagine that they have yet made back the money that they invested in moving Diablo over. Unless they've sold an ungodly number of copies that just people haven't been playing, which is possible.
If we assume 10% of the people who bought it are online at any one time, I'm just throwing out a number. And you said, so that'd be 50,000 copies. Mm-hmm. If it's on sale for $60, so let's see, that's $3 million. So they're going to get 2.1 million of that. Mm-hmm. That's probably about break even for manpower, etc., of moving things over.
About 6 months of work, for a team.
So they're, as a guess, they're already break even one day in.
which means that from their perspective, it's worth it. So,
but it's also opportunity cost. Could all of those people have been doing something else that would have earned significantly more money?
Yep.
Hard to know.
Yeah, 100%. So, in conclusion, based on that, people aren't super busting down the doors. This isn't a big deal. I think it's very interesting that this is just business as usual for both of these games. Like, it's not a huge deal that they're breaking exclusivity, which means I don't think that they did this. I'm as we look at the numbers, I'm inclined to agree with Geoff, right? Did they do this for monetary reasons? Maybe, but if they did it poorly. So there must have been, in my opinion, another reason to do this, and preemptively appeasing people who cry monopoly, right? When
I mean, I think I cannot picture a world in which this would have happened if they weren't trying to get acquired by Microsoft and having the regulatory hold up.
Yeah, I totally agree.
They've had PC exclusivity for so long, and it's done well enough for them, and they haven't exposed themselves to these other things, and it's continued to bring people into their ecosystem and keep them in their ecosystem and pass them between games that, I can't see a world where this happens if this wasn't for the acquisition. And I really do think that's the real reason that Blizzard moved their games over to Steam, was to get Microsoft to $69 million acquiring them and let that go through.
Yep. I think that's absolutely right. All right, Geoff, last question as we wrap up.
Okay.
Are they going to keep doing it? Are they gonna bring a Hearthstone, a World of Warcraft, a StarCraft 2? Are they going to bring a Heroes of the Storm?
No. WoW, no.
Okay.
HOTS, no.
Okay. HOTS is out. HOTS is in indefinite maintenance mode, by the way.
Right, that's what I mean. It's not worth it for HOTS. They earn too much money on WoW, and there's too much infrastructure on the patching and everything else for them to do it. Hearthstone, I could see happening, especially with the Steam Deck play. Like, to me, Warcraft, StarCraft, the RTS versions, maybe, but I think that's so tied to Battle.net on branding. But Hearthstone is kind of a play anywhere kind of game, and it's honestly, I think it's a better tablet game than a PC game. Yeah. So bringing that over to a Steam Deck makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So that would be my one guess for one more game.
All right, chat, and comments below. Do you agree? Do you think that there was some ulterior reason that Blizzard did this? Do you think we're on the money? Do you think this would have happened without the acquisition? And if you are someone who plays Blizzard games, what Blizzard game do you think belongs on Steam? Is it Hearthstone? Do you think there's secretly an untapped StarCraft 2 market on Steam? Let us know in the comments below. And thank you, as always, for joining us for Design Club. Say bye to the people, Geoff.
Bye to the people, Geoff. Have a good week.